The ship came down hard on the barren moon called Ka. Daniel Cole held tight to the controls as the wandering star screamed through the thin atmosphere and hit the ground with a crash that shook his bones. Metal groaned and sparks flew across the cockpit. When everything finally stopped moving, Daniel sat in the darkness for a long moment, breathing hard and checking himself for broken bones. He found none, which surprised him given how badly the landing had gone. He climbed out of the wreckage and stood on dust beneath a sky filled with distant stars. The air was cold and thin but breathable. His ship was a mess of twisted metal and leaking fuel, and he knew it would take days or maybe weeks to repair. He was stranded on a moon he had never heard of, far from any trade route he recognized. Daniel spotted lights in the distance, a settlement of some kind. He grabbed his emergency kit and started walking. The beings who lived there were unlike anything he had seen before. They had pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Their eyes were large and silver, like polished mirrors that reflected everything they saw. They were slender and delicate, dressed in simple robes made from woven plant fibers. When Daniel approached their village, they scattered like frightened animals. He held up his hands to show he meant no harm. He tried speaking in Galactic Common, but they did not understand. He tried gestures, pointing to himself and then to his broken ship in the distance. Slowly, carefully, some of them crept closer. An old one came forward. His face was lined with age, and his silver eyes had grown cloudy. He studied Daniel with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Daniel activated the small translation device on his wrist and spoke again. "I'm a traveler. My ship is broken. I need help." The device hummed and produced sounds in the old one's language. The elder's eyes widened. He spoke back, and the device translated his words. "You are human. We have heard stories of your kind. Violent, dangerous, unpredictable." Daniel nodded slowly. "Some of us are. I am just a cargo pilot. I carry goods between worlds. I mean you no harm." The elder considered this for a long moment. Then he gestured for Daniel to follow. The village was small and poor. The buildings were made from stone and mud, clustered together for warmth and protection. The people watched Daniel with wide, frightened eyes as he passed. Children hid behind their mothers. Young males gripped crude weapons but did not approach. The elder's name was. He led Daniel to a small hut and offered him food and water. The food was strange but edible. As Daniel ate, explained that his people were called the. They had lived on this moon for countless generations, mining rare minerals from the ground and trading them with occasional passing ships. Daniel asked if they could help him repair his vessel, said they would try, but their knowledge of human technology was limited. Over the next few days, Daniel worked on his ship during the daylight hours and returned to the village at night. They grew more comfortable with his presence. Some of the younger ones even helped him carry parts and tools. But Daniel noticed something strange. There was a girl being kept apart from the others. She was young and beautiful, with skin the color of a winter sky and eyes that shone like twin moons. She wore white robes decorated with silver thread, and the other treated her with a strange mixture of reverence and sadness. Whenever Daniel tried to approach her, someone would gently steer him away. Her name was Sira. He learned this from a young boy who had overcome his fear and started following Daniel around like a shadow. The boy told him that Sira was special. She had been chosen. "Chosen for what?" Daniel asked. The boy's face grew dark with sorrow. "The Devourer." Daniel pressed for more information, but the boy ran away. That night Daniel confronted. The old elder sighed heavily and gestured for Daniel to sit. "Every 10 cycles we must send an offering into the caverns beneath our world. There lives a creature older than memory. We call it the Devourer. If we do not feed it, it rises to the surface and destroys everything in its path. Our ancestors tried to fight it long ago. They all died. The sacrifices began after that. It is the only way to keep our people safe." Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You send people down there to be eaten." "We send one, always young, always female. It is our sacred duty." "And Sira is the one you have chosen this time." Nodded slowly. "She is the daughter of a minor clan leader. She accepted her fate with honor. The ceremony is in 3 days. Daniel stood up so quickly he knocked over his water. "This is wrong. You cannot just send a girl to die." His cloudy eyes grew hard. "Do not lecture us about what is right, human. You do not understand our ways. You do not know what the Devourer is capable of. We have lost entire villages to its hunger. The sacrifices keep it sleeping. One life every 10 cycles to save thousands. It is a price we must pay. Daniel wanted to argue, but he could see the pain in the old elder's face. This was not cruelty. It was desperation. These people had been living under the shadow of a monster for generations, and they had found the only solution they could imagine. But that did not make it right. The next day, Daniel watched from a distance as Sira said goodbye to her family. She had younger siblings, a brother and sister who clung to her robes and wept. Sira knelt down and held them close, whispering words of comfort that Daniel could not hear. Her mother stood behind them, her face carved from stone, her eyes empty of everything except grief. Sira did not cry. She smiled at her siblings and touched their faces gently. She told them to be brave. She told them she would watch over them from wherever souls go after death. Daniel turned away. His hands were shaking. He thought about his own sister, lost years ago to a sickness that could have been cured if his family had enough money for treatment. He thought about the helplessness he had felt, watching her grow weaker day by day while he could do nothing. He had spent his whole life running from that memory, taking jobs on distant worlds, never staying anywhere long enough to care about anyone. But standing on this cold moon, watching a young woman prepare to die for a tradition that demanded her blood, Daniel felt something he had not felt in years. He felt anger. And underneath the anger, buried deep but still burning, he felt hope. Because unlike the sickness that took his sister, this was a monster made of flesh and bone. Monsters could be killed. Daniel walked back to his ship and started gathering everything he had that might serve as a weapon. He did not know if he could save Sira. He did not know if he would survive trying. But he knew he could not live with himself if he did not try. The night of the ceremony arrived with a cold wind that swept across the barren landscape. Daniel had spent every spare moment preparing. He had modified his plasma cutter to its highest setting, turning a simple repair tool into something that could slice through metal. He had gathered emergency flares, a length of strong cable, and a knife he kept for cutting open cargo containers. It was not much against a creature that had terrorized an entire civilization, but it was all he had. He watched from the shadows as they gathered at the edge of their village. They wore dark robes and carried torches that flickered in the wind. Their faces were solemn, and many of them were weeping. This was not a celebration. It was a funeral procession for someone who was still alive. Sira walked at the center of the group, flanked by two elders who guided her steps. Her white robe seemed to glow in the torchlight. Her silver eyes stared straight ahead, calm and empty, like she had already left her body behind. She moved like someone walking in a dream. Elder led the procession. He carried a staff carved with symbols and chanted words in the old language that Daniel's translator could not fully interpret, something about duty and sacrifice and the hungry dark. Daniel followed at a distance, keeping to the shadows. The procession moved away from the village toward a rocky outcropping where a dark opening yawned in the stone, the entrance to the caverns, the home of the devourer. At the threshold, the procession stopped, turned to face Sira and spoke words of blessing. He touched her forehead with oil and marked her cheeks with ash. The ritual was ancient and practiced, each movement precise and deliberate. Sira's younger siblings were not present. Daniel was grateful for that. No child should have to watch their sister walk to her death. Finished his blessings and stepped aside. The path to the cavern was clear. Sira took a deep breath and began to walk forward. Daniel moved. He stepped out of the shadows and into the torchlight. The gasped and scattered. Some of the males raised their weapons, but Daniel ignored them. He walked straight toward Sira and the cavern entrance. "Stop," commanded. His voice was sharp with fear. "Human, you do not understand what you are doing." "I understand perfectly," Daniel said. "You are sending this girl to die. I am not going to let that happen. The devourer must be fed. If it is not, it will rise and destroy us all. This is our way. It has been our way for generations." "Then your way is wrong." His face twisted with frustration. "You cannot fight the devourer. Warriors far braver than you have tried. They all died. You will die too, and Sira will still be taken. You will accomplish nothing except adding your bones to the pile." Daniel looked at Sira. She was staring at him with those silver eyes, and for the first time since he had seen her, there was something alive in her expression. Confusion, hope, fear. "What weapons did your warriors use?" Daniel asked without looking away from her. Hesitated. "Spears, blades, the finest our craftsmen could make." "Did any of them have one of these?" Daniel held up the plasma cutter. It hummed with barely contained energy, and the blade of superheated particles glowed bright blue in the darkness. They had no answer. Daniel stepped forward and took Sierra's hand. Her skin was cool against his, and he felt her fingers tremble. "Where I come from," Daniel said quietly, "we do not feed our children to monsters. We kill the monsters instead." Sierra's voice was soft and uncertain. "You will die." "Maybe, but I would rather die fighting than live knowing I let you walk into that darkness alone." He pulled her gently toward the cavern entrance. They did not try to stop them. They were too shocked, too confused, too caught between their ancient traditions and this strange human who everything they believed. Called out one final warning. "The devourer will take you both, 2 deaths instead of 1. Your sacrifice means nothing." Daniel did not look back. "We will see." The cavern swallowed them. The torchlight from outside faded quickly, and Daniel activated a small light from his emergency kit. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing walls of rough stone that glistened with moisture. The air grew warmer as they descended, thick with a smell that reminded Daniel of rotting meat. Sierra walked beside him, her bare feet silent on the stone. She knew the path. Every child was taught the way to the devourer's lair, even though most would never walk it. It was part of their history, their identity, their burden. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Her voice echoed strangely in the tunnel. "You do not know me, you owe me nothing." Daniel considered the question. "When I was young, I had a sister. She got sick. There was medicine that could have saved her, but my family did not have enough money. She died while I sat beside her bed and held her hand. I could do nothing but watch." Sierra was silent, waiting for him to continue. "I have spent my whole life since then trying not to care about anyone. It is easier that way. No attachments, no pain. Just moving from one world to the next, carrying cargo, keeping my head down." He paused and looked at her. In the dim light, her blue skin seemed to glow faintly, and her silver eyes reflected his face back at him. "But when I saw you saying goodbye to your family, something broke inside me. I realized that all these years of running, all the distance I put between myself and other people, it did not protect me. It just made me empty. If I walk away from you now, if I let you die without even trying to save you, then I am not really alive anyway. I might as well have climbed into my sister's grave with her." Sierra reached out and touched his arm. "You are a strange creature, human." "My name is Daniel." "Daniel," she said it slowly, testing the sounds. "I am Sierra." "I know, a boy in the village told me." She almost smiled. "Little, he is always getting into trouble." They continued deeper into the caverns. The tunnel widened and branched, but Sierra guided them without hesitation. The smell grew worse, and Daniel began to see bones scattered along the path. Small bones at first, then larger ones. Some were old and yellow. Others looked far more recent. "The devourer has lived here for as long as anyone can remember," Sierra said quietly. "The oldest stories say it came from somewhere else, from the deep places between stars. It fell to our world long ago and made these caverns its home. Our ancestors tried to drive it away, but nothing worked, so they began the sacrifices." "How long has this been going on?" "Hundreds of cycles, maybe thousands. No one knows for certain." Daniel felt the weight of that history pressing down on him. Generations of fear. Generations of young women walking this same path to their deaths, all because one monster had fallen from the sky and made itself a god. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Daniel's light could not reach the ceiling or the far walls. The darkness seemed to swallow everything beyond a few meters. And somewhere in that darkness, something moved. Daniel heard it before he saw it. A wet, scraping sound like something massive dragging itself across stone. Then 2 points of dull red light appeared in the distance. Eyes. They fixed on Daniel and Sierra with ancient hunger. The devourer had awakened. Daniel pushed Sierra behind him and raised his plasma cutter. His hand was steady, but his heart was pounding. "Stay behind me," he said. "No matter what happens, stay behind me." The red eyes grew larger as the creature approached. Daniel heard the click of countless legs on stone, the rasp of armored plates sliding against each other, the low rumble of a growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He had no idea if he could kill this thing, but he was going to find out. The devourer emerged from the shadows, and Daniel understood why generations of warriors had failed. The creature was enormous, stretching at least 30 meters from head to tail. Its body resembled a serpent crossed with a centipede, covered in overlapping plates of black armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. Dozens of legs carried it forward with horrible grace, each one ending in a curved claw at the stone floor. Its head was a nightmare of mandibles and fangs, designed to crush and tear and consume. And its eyes, those dull red points of light, held an intelligence that was cold and patient and very, very old. This was not a mindless beast. This was a predator that had been killing for longer than human civilization had existed. Daniel felt Sira pressed against his back, trembling. He could hear her rapid breathing, could feel the terror that radiated from her small body. She had been prepared to die, had accepted her fate with the quiet dignity of her people, but facing the actual monster was different from accepting an abstract concept. The devourer stopped a few meters away and studied them. Its mandibles clicked together slowly, producing a sound like stones grinding against each other. It seemed almost curious, as if wondering why its meal had brought a companion. Daniel raised the plasma cutter. The blade hummed, casting blue light across the creature's armored face. For a moment, nothing moved. The cavern was silent except for the hum of the weapon and the sound of breathing. Then the devourer lunged. It moved faster than something that size should have been able to move. Daniel threw himself sideways, dragging Sira with him. The creature's mandibles snapped shut on empty air, missing them by centimeters. Daniel felt the rush of displaced air and smelled the rot of old death on the monster's breath. He rolled to his feet and slashed with the plasma cutter. The superheated blade struck one of the creature's legs, cutting through the armor and severing the limb at the joint. The devourer screamed, a sound that was somehow both mechanical and organic, and Daniel felt his ears ring from the volume. Dark fluid sprayed from the wound. The creature had blood, which meant it could bleed, which meant it could die. Daniel did not have time to celebrate. The devourer recovered instantly and swung its massive tail. He ducked under the blow, but the tip caught his shoulder and sent him spinning across the chamber floor. Pain exploded through his body, but he forced himself to keep moving, to keep the creature's attention on him. Sira had retreated to the edge of the chamber. Daniel could see her silver eyes gleaming in the darkness, wide with fear but also with something else. She was watching him fight, watching him defy the monster that her people had feared for generations, and he could see wonder mixing with the terror on her face. The devourer advanced on Daniel, more cautious now. It had been wounded, perhaps for the first time in centuries, and it was reassessing its prey. Daniel circled slowly, keeping the plasma cutter between himself and the creature. His shoulder throbbed and he suspected something was broken, but he could still move his arm. That was enough. "Come on," he growled. "Come and get me." The creature struck again, but this time Daniel was ready. He the lunging head and drove the plasma cutter into the base of the creature's neck. The blade sank deep, and the devourer thrashed wildly. One of its many legs caught Daniel in the chest and hurled him backward. He crashed into the cavern wall and slid to the ground, gasping for breath. The plasma cutter had been torn from his grip. It lay on the stone floor between him and the monster, still humming with energy. The devourer turned toward him. Dark fluid leaked from its wounds, but they were not enough to slow it down. It opened its mandibles wide and crawled forward, savoring the moment. After countless easy meals, it had finally found prey that fought back, and now it was going to enjoy tearing that prey apart. Daniel tried to rise, but his body would not cooperate. His ribs screamed with pain and his vision blurred at the edges. He had given everything he had, and it was not enough. Then Sira moved. She darted out from her hiding place and grabbed a loose stone from the ground, a fragment of rock the size of her fist. Before Daniel could shout for her to run, she threw the stone at the devourer's head. It struck one of those terrible red eyes, and the creature recoiled with another ear-splitting shriek. "Over here," Sira screamed. "Look at me." The devourer turned toward her. Its wounded eye leaked dark fluid, and its remaining eye fixed on her with murderous rage. It had forgotten Daniel. All its ancient hunger was focused on the small blue figure that had dared to hurt it. Daniel saw his chance. He pushed himself up, fighting through the pain, and stumbled toward the plasma cutter. His fingers closed around the grip just as the devourer lunged at Sira. She tried to dodge, but she was not fast enough. One of the creature's forelegs caught her and pinned her to the ground. Daniel ran. He covered the distance between them in seconds, driven by something beyond adrenaline, beyond fear. The creature was lowering its head towards Sira, its mandibles opening to bite, and Daniel threw himself onto its back. The devourer bucked and twisted, trying to throw him off, but Daniel held on with desperate strength. He climbed toward the creature's head, using the gaps in its armor as handholds, ignoring the cuts and scrapes that tore at his hands. The monster could not reach him without releasing Sira, and it seemed unwilling to let go of its prize. Daniel reached the base of the creature's skull. He could see where the armor plates joined together, where the protection was weakest. He raised the plasma cutter high above his head. "This is for every girl you ever ate," he said. He drove the blade down with all his remaining strength. It punched through the gap in the armor and sank deep into the creature's brain. The devourer went rigid. Its mandibles snapped open and closed without direction. Its legs twitched and scraped against the stone. Then it collapsed. Daniel was thrown clear as the creature fell. He hit the ground hard and lay there, unable to move, watching as the monster that had terrorized them for generations shuddered and died. Its red eyes dimmed and went dark. Its massive body settled against the stone floor with a final, heavy thud. Silence filled the cavern. Daniel heard footsteps approaching. Then Sira's face appeared above him, her silver eyes filled with tears. "You killed it," she whispered. "You actually killed it." Daniel tried to smile, but even that small movement hurt. "Told you I was not planning to die." Sira laughed, a sound that was half sob and half wonder. She knelt beside him and took his hand in hers. Her fingers were shaking, but her grip was strong. "You are bleeding everywhere," she said. "I noticed. Can you walk?" Daniel considered the question. His ribs were definitely broken. His shoulder might be dislocated. He had cuts and bruises covering most of his body. But Sira was alive. The monster was dead. And somewhere above them, a whole village was waiting to learn that they would never have to sacrifice their children again. "Help me up," he said. Sira slid her arm under his shoulders and lifted him carefully. The pain was incredible, but Daniel gritted his teeth and forced his legs to support his weight. Together, leaning on each other, they began the long climb back to the surface. Dawn was breaking over the barren moon when Daniel and Sira emerged from the cavern. The sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, and the cold air tasted than anything Daniel had ever breathed. He was barely conscious, leaning heavily on Sira, leaving a trail of blood on the rocky ground behind them. The entire settlement had gathered at the cavern entrance. They had been there all night, waiting in fearful silence for the inevitable. They expected to hear the devourer's roar echo from the depths. They expected to feel the ground shake as the creature returned to its slumber, satisfied with its meal. They expected to mourn another lost daughter. What they did not expect was to see Sira walk out of the darkness, alive and unharmed, supporting a battered human who could barely stand. For a long moment no one moved. They stared at the impossible sight before them, their silver eyes wide with disbelief. Then Sira spoke. "The devourer is dead." Her voice was not loud, but in the morning stillness, everyone heard. The words hung in the air like something sacred, something that could not possibly be true. "The human killed it," Sira continued. "He went into the darkness with me and he killed the monster. We are free." The silence shattered. Some of them fell to their knees and wept. Others shouted with joy, embracing each other, laughing and crying at the same time. Children who had been taught to fear the caverns their whole lives ran to their parents and asked what was happening. Young males who had always dreamed of fighting the devourer but never had the weapons or the courage stood in stunned amazement. Elder pushed through the crowd. His ancient face was twisted with emotions that Daniel could not read, doubt perhaps, or hope that he was afraid to believe. "Show me," the elder demanded. "Take me down there and show me the body." A group of young volunteered immediately. They grabbed torches and disappeared into the cavern, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Daniel wanted to go with them, to prove what he had done, but his body finally gave out. His legs buckled, and he would have fallen if Sira had not caught him. "He needs help," she said urgently. "He is badly hurt." The healers came forward hesitantly. They had never treated a human before and were clearly uncertain about his strange red blood and firm pink skin. But Sira refused to let them hesitate. She directed them to carry Daniel to the nearest hut and began listing his injuries. Broken ribs, possible internal damage, deep cuts that needed cleaning and binding. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness. He was aware of gentle hands touching his wounds, of cool water washing away the blood, of bandages being wrapped around his chest and shoulder. He heard voices speaking in the language, urgent and confused, and Sierra's voice cutting through them with surprising authority. At some point, Sierra brought his ship's medical kit. She had retrieved it from the wandering star while he was unconscious, studying the human medicines and trying to understand what each one did. She compared the information on the labels with his symptoms and made careful decisions about what to give him. "You learn quickly," Daniel mumbled when he woke enough to see what she was doing. Sierra looked up from the medical scanner she was trying to operate. "I have to. No one else here knows how to fix you." The group that had gone into the cavern returned hours later. They carried fragments of the Devourer's armor as proof, great black plates that gleamed in the daylight. They also carried one of its mandibles, a curved blade of bone and chitin longer than a grown was tall. The excitement in the village rose to a fever pitch. Elder came to see Daniel that evening. The old priest moved slowly, as if the weight of centuries had settled on his shoulders all at once. He sat down beside Daniel's bed and was quiet for a long time. "I did not believe it was possible," finally said. "For so long, the Devourer was our god and our curse. We built our entire society around appeasing it. Our traditions, our laws, our understanding of the world, all of it was shaped by the monster in the darkness." Daniel did not respond. He was not sure what the elder wanted from him. "And now it is dead," shook his head slowly. "One human with a strange weapon accomplished what generations of our finest warriors could not. I do not know whether to thank you or curse you." "Curse me. You have destroyed our world, human. Everything we believed, everything we built, it was all based on a lie. The Devourer was not invincible. Our ancestors did not have to start the sacrifices. Thousands of our daughters died for nothing." The bitterness in the old man's voice was sharp, but Daniel heard something else beneath it: relief. "They did not die for nothing," Daniel said quietly. "They died because your people did not have the tools to fight. You did what you had to do to survive. That is not shameful, that is just sad." Studied him with those cloudy silver eyes. "You are a strange creature, Daniel Cole. You nearly died to save a girl you did not know, a girl from a species you had never met, and now you offer us comfort instead of judgment. Where I come from, we have a saying: you cannot change the past. You can only build a better future." The elder was silent for another long moment. Then he reached out and placed his hand on Daniel's uninjured shoulder. "Perhaps humans are not what the stories say. Perhaps there is more to your kind than violence and unpredictability." He rose slowly to his feet. "Rest now, Daniel Cole. You have earned it." The days that followed were strange and wonderful. They transformed almost overnight. Young people ventured into the caverns that had been forbidden for generations, mapping tunnels and discovering vast deposits of valuable minerals that the Devourer had been guarding. Families who had lost daughters to the sacrifices gathered to mourn and heal together. The ceremonial robes were burned in a great fire, and songs were sung that had not been sung in living memory. And through it all, Sierra stayed by Daniel's side. She learned to read the labels on his medicine bottles. She figured out how to operate the medical scanner. She asked him endless questions about humans and Earth and the galaxy beyond her small moon. Daniel answered as best he could, watching her eyes light up with wonder at each new piece of information. "Why do you stay?" she asked him one evening as the sun set outside. "Your ship is repaired enough to fly. You could leave." Daniel looked at her. The fatting light made her blue skin glow warmly, and her silver eyes reflected the colors of the sky. "I could," he admitted, "but I spent my whole life running from one place to another, never belonging anywhere, never caring about anyone. And then I came here. I met you. I fought a monster. And for the first time in years, I feel like I actually did something that mattered." He reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were cool and slender, but they wrapped around his without hesitation. "I have nowhere I need to be," Daniel said, "but I think I found somewhere I want to stay." Sierra smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. "Then stay," she said. "Stay with us, stay with me." Daniel smiled back. "I thought you would never ask." 1 year had passed since the night Daniel Cole walked into the caverns and killed the Devourer. The barren moon of Ka was no longer a place of fear and shadows. It had become something new, something hopeful, something alive. The settlement had grown beyond recognition. New buildings rose where empty ground had been. Trade ships landed regularly, bringing goods and medicines and technologies that they had never dreamed of. The minerals they mined from the caverns were valuable across the galaxy, and Daniel had helped them negotiate fair prices with honest traders. Children played in the streets without fear. Young people talked about the future instead of dreading the next sacrifice cycle. Old wounds were healing, slowly but surely, as they learned to live without the monster that had defined their existence for so long. Daniel stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and purple. He had grown comfortable here, more comfortable than he had been anywhere in his life. They had accepted him as one of their own. They called him the Monster Slayer, though he always felt embarrassed by the title. He heard footsteps behind him and smiled without turning around. "You are up early," Sira said, coming to stand beside him. "Could not sleep, too much to think about." Sira leaned against his shoulder. In the year since he had saved her, their bond had grown into something deeper than either of them had expected. She was no longer the quiet girl who had accepted death with dignity. She was a leader among her people, a bridge between the old ways and the new, and the love of Daniel's life. "Wants to see you," she said. "He says it is urgent." Daniel frowned. The old elder had been growing weaker in recent months. His body was giving out, though his mind remained sharp. Daniel had come to respect deeply, had come to see him as something like a father figure in this strange new life. They walked together to his dwelling. The elder lay on his bed, surrounded by his family and the other spiritual leaders of the settlement. His cloudy eyes found Daniel as soon as he entered. "Come closer, Monster Slayer." His voice was weak but steady. "I do not have much time and there are things I must say." Daniel knelt beside the old man's bed. Sira stayed close, her hand resting on Daniel's back. "I was afraid of you when you first arrived," said. "A human, alone and stranded with strange tools and a stranger attitude. I thought you would bring disaster upon us. I thought the stories about your kind were true." The elder paused to catch his breath. "But you proved me wrong. You showed us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act despite the fear. You gave us back our future, Daniel Cole. You freed us from a prison we did not even know we were in." Reached out with a trembling hand and grasped Daniel's wrist. "Promise me something. Promise me you will continue to guide my people. They trust you. They need you. Not as a ruler or a master, but as a friend and an advisor. Will you do this for me?" Daniel felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. "I promise." Smiled and relaxed back against his pillows. "Good, that is good." He looked at Sira. "Take care of him, child. He pretends to be strong, but he carries old wounds that have never healed. Help him the way he helped you." Sira nodded, her silver eyes bright with tears. "I will, elder, I promise." Closed his eyes. "Then I can rest." The old man passed quietly a few hours later, surrounded by those who loved him. They mourned their spiritual leader with songs and tears, but there was no despair in their grief. Had lived to see his people freed. He had died knowing that the future was bright. 2 weeks after his passing, a new ship appeared in the sky above Ka. It was larger and sleeker than the trade vessels that usually visited, and it bore the markings of the Galactic Union Survey Corps. Daniel watched it land with a mixture of curiosity and concern. He had been expecting this moment for some time. Eventually, someone from the larger galaxy would notice that a human was living among an uncontacted species and would come to ask questions. The survey team consisted of 3 beings, a stocky reptilian, and a human woman with hair and sharp eyes. They introduced themselves as representatives of the Galactic Union's Cultural Protection Division, tasked with ensuring that primitive species were not exploited by more advanced civilizations. The human woman, whose name was Hayes, did most of the talking. She asked Daniel how he had come to be here, what his relationship was with whether he had interfered with their cultural development in any way. Daniel told her the truth. He had crashed on this moon by accident. He had found a people living in fear of a monster. He had killed the monster and stayed to help them recover. He had not tried to make them like humans or force them to adopt human ways. He had simply given them the chance to choose their own path. Listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, she turned to the other members of her team. They conversed quietly in a language Daniel did not understand. "This is an unusual situation," finally said. "Normally, we would recommend removing outside influences from developing civilizations, but they have clearly benefited from your presence. Their society has advanced in positive ways, and there is no evidence of exploitation or cultural erasure." She paused, seeming to consider her next words carefully. We would like to hear from them themselves. Daniel nodded. He had expected this. I will arrange a meeting with their leaders. The meeting took place in the center of the settlement. The new council of elders, along with representatives from every family and clan, gathered to speak with the survey team. Many of them were nervous. They had never seen beings like thee or the reptilian before. But Sira was not nervous. She stepped forward and addressed the survey team in Galactic Common, a language she had spent the past year learning from Daniel's ship's database. Her accent was strange, but her words were clear. I was meant to die, she said. My people had been sacrificing their daughters to a monster for longer than anyone could remember. We believed it was the only way to survive. We believed we were weak and helpless. She looked at Daniel, and her silver eyes were filled with love. Daniel showed us that we were wrong. He did not conquer us or control us. He did not tell us what to think or how to live. He simply refused to let me die. And when he killed the devourer, he gave us something we had lost long ago. He gave us hope. The other murmured in agreement. Some of them reached out to touch Daniel's shoulders, his arms, his hands, a gesture of gratitude and respect. We ask that you allow him to stay, Sira continued, not as a ruler over us but as a friend among us. He has earned that right. And her team conferred again. When they finished, the human woman was almost smiling. We will register thee as a developing civilization with protected status. This means other species cannot exploit you or interfere with your natural development. And yes, Daniel Cole may remain as your liaison and advisor. It is clear that he has acted with honor and respect. A cheer rose from the gathered. Daniel felt Sira's hand slip into his, and he squeezed it gently. That evening, after the survey team had departed with promises to return in 6 months, Daniel and Sira stood together at the edge of the settlement. The sky was full of stars, and somewhere among them was Earth, the home Daniel had not seen in years. Do you ever miss it? Sira asked. Daniel thought about the question. He thought about the crowded cities and the skis and the sister he had lost so long ago. He thought about all the years he had spent running from one world to the next, never finding a place where he belonged. Then he looked at Sira, at her blue skin glowing softly in the starlight, at her silver eyes reflecting the vastness of the universe. I used to, he said, but then I found something better. I found a home. Sira smiled and leaned against him. I am glad you crashed your ship here. Daniel laughed. That makes 2 of us. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Behind them, the settlement hummed with life and hope. Somewhere in the darkness, a child laughed. Somewhere else, an old woman sang a song that had been forbidden for generations. And across the galaxy, humans would always be known for many things, some good, some terrible. But on one small moon, orbiting a forgotten sun, they would be remembered as the people who refused to let monsters win.